warriors. That's right. Warriors for the Most High. Yahushua. That's right. This is how we do it in Israel.
Good evening, brothers and sisters. This is Brother Kawakab, and we have also with me my co-host, Brother Amayatazar.
Shalom, everybody.
Hey, listen, tonight we decided we wanted to kind of bring some relevance to what's taking place in the Gulf region, all right? So what we're talking about tonight, the topic, this evening's topic, is Gulf of Mexico disaster, human error, or divine plague. And what we want to do is actually use the scriptures to speak and show you that this is actually not just a divine plague. In other words, a plague on behalf of the Most High, or a plague by the Most High, but at the same time, it's only one in a series of plagues that will be hitting America and, for the most part, the Edomite establishment worldwide. The global Edomite power structure is going to be assaulted by the Most High. And so, just to repeat it, the Gulf of Mexico disaster is just one. What makes the Gulf of Mexico disaster so, I should say, such a cameo event is that it specifically is stated in the scriptures. And so what I plan to do tonight is not only to go into the Gulf of Mexico disaster, but for the most part to use the Gulf of Mexico disaster as a platform to springboard us off into what we can expect from the Most High concerning plagues, concerning the dynamic in the deterioration and the ultimate breaking down of this powerhouse. It's actually recognized now as the sole superpower, right? And so we're going to use this as a platform to springboard us into what's taking place in America and, like I said, other Edomite interests or Edomite global power structures, so that for our new listeners, if we have any out there, when we speak of Esau, or when you hear us talk about the Edomites, biblically speaking, that is the so-called white people's biblical name. Everybody, every man, every nation that's in the earth today is represented by a progenitor in the Bible. Every representative, every nation today has a biblical progenitor that can be traced back to Genesis chapter 10 in the Table of Nations. So when we refer to the Edomites, when we refer to Esau, when we refer to Edom, we're referring biblically to people who are recognized today globally as so-called white people or Caucasians, Europeans. Those are all the most common uses of identifying that group of people, that ethnic group of people. So what we want to do, actually, we want to start off with Revelation chapter 8 and verse 8, and we're going to read that for you. Revelation chapter 8, verses 8 on down. We'll let you know when we decide to stop.
Revelations chapter 8, verse 8. And the second angel sounded, and as it were a great mountain burning with fire.
Listen, I want you to read it a little bit slower. Read it again.
Revelations chapter 8, verse 8. And the second angel sounded.
When it's talking about the second angel sounded, if you listen or if you read the book of Revelation, various chapters record events that are to take place, and those events that take place are usually marked by vials being poured out upon the earth, as in an actual vessel that has some type of, that contains some type of liquid. So if it's not speaking of vials, it'll say a trumpet. If it's not speaking of a trumpet, as in the trumpet announcing something. In other chapters, it'll refer to as seals, as if a letter which has been sealed. It'll say there were seals that were broken. And when these seals are broken, they are the equivalent of, let's say, an era in which specified prophesied events must come to pass. So read that verse again, Revelation 8 and verse 8.
Revelations chapter 8 and verse 8. And the second angel sounded, and as it were a great mountain.
Listen to this. It says the second angel sounded, and as it were a great mountain, read on down,
burning with fire, was cast into the sea, and the third part of the sea became blood.
Now listen, this is what I would like to ask people to do. Because when you read the scripture, it doesn't say a burning mountain was cast into the sea. It compared, I shouldn't say it, John, the Apostle John the Revelator, he's also known as, literally said he saw something that he could compare to a burning mountain. Literally, a burning mountain that was cast into the ocean. Now, you can do a Google, literally, Google in this term. Google in Gulf or deep water horizon oil rig burning and sinking. And the first hit, it'll be the first or the second hit. Normally when I do it, and I've been doing it consistently to see how it comes up, it'll be a series of, it's a website of National Geographic. And it has about 4 or 5 pictures of the Gulf, or I should say the deep water horizon oil rig that was literally burning, and then they had the latter pictures as though or when it was sinking. Now, when you actually look at this structure, it is so monumental. It's sitting on the water. The second and third pictures are the ones where you can actually see why John the Revelator, when he saw this in a futuristic vision, said, as it were, a burning mountain. Read that again, brother.
Revelation chapter 8 and verse 8 from the top. And the second angel sounded, and as it were, a great mountain burning with fire.
Yeah, he saw, that's why I said if you sit back and really read what he said, he didn't say he saw a burning mountain. He said, as it were a burning mountain. So he saw something that was so futuristic that he could only liken it in his time to a mountain. But if you go to that website, like I said, you do that Google search on Deepwater Horizon, oil rig, burning and sinking, it'll take you to, the first hit is going to be a National Geographic page where it has, like I said, a slideshow, as a matter of fact, of 4 or 5 pictures. But I should say, the second and the third picture are the most telling of and are the most visually descriptive of what we just read, because it actually looked like a big monstrous mountain that was on fire. But read it again.
And the second angel sounded, and as it were, a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea, and the third part of the sea became blood.
So now listen, when he said a third part of the sea became blood, one of the things that I've been doing, and I'm sure most of at least the American inhabitants have been doing also, the inhabitants, the citizens of America, it's been really, aside from what they've been getting on the mainstream news, they have to have been going to YouTube, checking out all the different clips that are coming up from residents and citizens of the United States that live in that area. And so you'll see the, because people say, well, it's an oil spill. It is not no oil spill. It's actually and more accurately, you'll get descriptions of it as being a volcano of oil. And that's more descriptive. When you actually read some of the articles, there are arguments, there are speculations that range of the pressure of the oils and the gases and other toxins that were coming out of that volcano of oil. They say the pressure was anywhere between from 20,000 to 100,000 pounds per square inch. Now the point is, when you see that liquid and all the animals, all the sea creatures that have been affected by it, they don't look like they've been dipped in anything black. It actually looks like they're covered in blood. You'll see the seagulls, you'll see dolphins, you'll see turtles. All of these animals, all of these creatures, when you see them, you'll see cleanup workers. You'll see rescue people rescuing these animals, and the pictures show these animals covered in a substance that's thick and almost burgundy-like red. And that's why, remember, John, when you read this book of Revelation, he's describing to us what he saw. So read it again, brother.
Revelations chapter 8 and verse 8. And the second angel sounded, and as it were, a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea. And the third part of the sea became blood.
Now, listen, what we're reading, he said the third part of the sea became blood. But if we sit back and just use what we know about the scriptures, John is describing an event to us. He's describing a futuristic event. So, actually, the sea being turned to blood is saying whatever happened to the sea, it was a result of this object that could be compared to a mountain on fire being cast into the ocean. The result was the sea looking like it was turned to blood. So what it's really talking about is, as a result, that oil, something took place in the ocean that resulted in the change, in the destruction of that environment. Read on down.
Verse 9. And the third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died.
Now, it's funny because, a lot of people don't understand why it keeps referring to this event as having affected a third part of the waters and a third part of the creatures of the sea. Go ahead.
And the third part of the ships were destroyed.
Now, well, I'm going to show you what's taking place, because this event hasn't completely played out. It's like as a matter of fact, like I said, we're going to use this specific event to springboard us into understanding where America is in its attack, or I should say, in where is America in the Most High attacking it? At what sequence can we consider this event, the Gulf of Mexico disaster? So let's talking about the third. I'm going to give you an explanation, and I really urge, especially because I'm not going to be able to go slow down and really, how can I put it, give you time to take notes. But what I would urge those listeners to do is, those who are listening, once the show is completely broadcasted, then you can actually wait until the show is archived, which was like 5 to 15 minutes, and then you can go back and take your time and rewind and write down these notes and actually go do some research. So, because what I'm going to explain to you is why the scriptures say that as a result of this event, a third of the waters was affected. When you go and do receive or check out a panoramic map of the entire globe, and I'm going to situate visually for you. If you're looking at this globe, and to your left, the extreme left of the globe, you have the Pacific Ocean, and then generally speaking, relatively in the middle of the show, in the middle of the map, you have the Atlantic Ocean. And then when you go to, for the most part, the extreme right of the map, visually, you're going to see the Indian Ocean. And those are the big major waters. The biggest of the three literally being the Atlantic Ocean. The Atlantic Ocean is a body of water that consists of, all together, you got the farthest north, which is up near the Atlantic, or I should say the Arctic Circle, currents that mix down all the way down south with the South Atlantic. So what takes place, I'm going to actually give you a breakdown on why it says the third. I want you to read that again, brother.
Okay. Revelations chapter 8 and verse 8. And the second angel sounded, and as it were, a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea, and the third part of the sea became blood.
Now listen, when it said the third part of the sea, it's literally talking about that region. But listen, when this is all said and done, and I shouldn't say when it's all said and done, because I don't mean that it's going to come a time when this is a done deal. The only time it's a done deal is when Christ will have come back and will have delivered his people. But in other words, before this account can be really, let's say, summarized with what's taking place with this Gulf disaster, the entire Atlantic Ocean will have been contaminated, and many of its corresponding bodies of water. And I'm gonna give you the breakdown for you now. But here's the point: is when you deal with the Gulf of Mexico, it has a current that is literally carried by the Caribbean current to the eastern shores of the state of Florida. And as a matter of fact, maybe about 2 or 3 weeks after the initial explosion, sinking of the rig, and then the finding out that it wasn't able to be contained. This volcano of oil of this petroleum wasn't able to be contained. About 3 or 4 weeks after that, it was beginning to appear that what? If you're watching the news, if you've been checking out your YouTube clips and checking out specifically a lot of other alternative media sites, you were seeing how fast, how rapidly that substance made it along the shores of Florida. You got people literally that was filming and sitting and downloading YouTube clips of tar balls about the size anywhere from a golf ball to the size of a basketball, from a golf ball to the size of a bowling ball, rolling up on the shores of the Gulf Coast states. Now, the reason I say Florida is because the majority of the videos that came in first began to come in from Florida, but it got to the point where literally people were sending videos in from the beaches of North Carolina. Now, we know North Carolina is the eastern seaboard. North Carolina's shore is what? The Atlantic Ocean. So I won't even go as far as to say it's safe to say. You can say it with certainty that the contamination that was taking place in the Gulf had already been carried by the Caribbean current to the eastern shores of the state of Florida and from there northward. And that's what takes place, because once you get to those waters, you have a current that's called the Antilles current that carries the current and the waters to the Atlantic Ocean. Trying to show you. So now we're in the Atlantic Ocean. From the Atlantic Ocean, the Gulf Stream, and this is, listen, you can go, matter of fact, do another Google. Do a Google called Atlantic Ocean Currents. Atlantic Ocean and corresponding bodies of waters currents. And it'll give you a full detailed breakdown of from the South Atlantic all the way up to the Arctic, all the way to the Arctic Circle, how the currents work and merge and send the flow of waters. And that's why the scriptures literally say it's going to be, before it's all said and done, it's going to be a third part of the waters. In other words, you can look forward to seeing the intense and severe contaminating of the Atlantic Ocean and its corresponding bodies of water. Now, I'm going to continue this. So from the time that the waters are carried to the Atlantic Ocean, there's a current called the Gulf Stream that leads the waters to another body or another current, which is called the North Atlantic Drift. And the North Atlantic Drift, literally, what happens at the North Atlantic Drift, two things happen, and I'm going to focus on one first. I'm going to focus on the currents that continually flow northward. What happens is you got water that flow north toward the North Atlantic Ocean, slip between Iceland and Ireland, farther up north between Iceland and Norway. And right up there, you'll find the Arctic Circle that takes the current and brings it back down south, literally between Iceland and Greenland. It's actually called the East Greenland Current. Now, from there, literally, the waters are carried up northward on the west side of Greenland by the West Greenland Current, and it takes it and shoots it straight up to a body of water called the Baffin Bay. What I'm trying to show you is, go do your research. This is how the waters work. These are the currents. So the Baffin Bay, the water actually, from that point, that's as far north that the waters can go. The water heads back south past the Davis Strait, where it's picked up and carried back down south by what is referred to as the Labrador Current. Now, what I've described to you literally is, although we've gone from Florida up until, for the most part, the bodies of water that go from the shores of Norway, westward to the shores of Ireland, and then around and farther westward and to the shores of Greenland, and farther on down. What I'm trying to show you is it's still a circular pattern. that stems all the way from the Florida, that goes all the way up to Norway, where the bodies of water. And then let me say this. The second thing that takes place once the waters hit the North Atlantic is literally the waters continue eastward toward Portugal, where they head from there southward, taken by a current that's called the Canary Current, okay, where the waters merge, they head westward, carried by the North Equatorial Current, and they join again with the Atlantic Current, or with the Antilles Current and the Caribbean Current. In other words, it's a cycle that literally goes from the Gulf of Mexico to Florida, from Florida to the waters that lead to the shores of Norway, Ireland, and Greenland, and then on back down. So that's a massive circle. But let me say this. If you're looking on that map, what do you get? You literally see it. That's, generally speaking, the Atlantic Ocean is a third. I always say when you looking at a panoramic map, what do you have? You got, to the extreme right, you got the Pacific Ocean. Then you have a continent called the Americas. Canada, all the way up to the Arctic, Canada, United States, Mexico, Central America, where we are, and then South America. And then from there, you have another body of water, generally speaking. In other words, because I'm not speaking of the Gulf of Mexico, I'm not speaking about the Caribbean Ocean or the Caribbean. I'm not speaking about these areas there. I'm speaking about the massive bodies of water. So you got the Pacific, then you got the Atlantic, and then on the Atlantic, you got from the north to the south, you got the Scandinavian countries, you got Europe coming down southward, and you got Africa, and then sitting under Asia, sitting under, for the most part, Central to East Asia, you have what? You have the Indian Ocean, and its corresponding bodies of water, which really are the Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengali, or the Bengal Bay. So the point is, the Atlantic Ocean is crystal clear for you to see that is, for anyone to see, that is a third of the water. So it's telling you, before long, and the funny thing is how it seems to have been a problem that's been solved now. Supposedly it's been capped, but like I said, this is an issue that have taken place for 88 days of millions of gallons of petroleum and petrochemicals that were dumped, by a volcano, by a petroleum volcano under the seabed. Then on top of that, you have another untold millions of chemicals that was a dispersant. In other words, it was used to break up the oil. This is what people don't understand when the scriptures say, read that again, brother, because I want you to read what from verse 9 where it tells you about what was the result. The sea creatures died. Go ahead.
Revelation chapter 8 and verse 9. And the third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died.
Yeah, so it's telling you the third part of the creatures died. So we're talking about all the oil. It turns out that not only did the petroleum and all of let's talk about what the petroleum and all the petrochemicals that make up oil. That the actual chemicals that make up oil, the effect that concentrated amount of chemicals and petrochemicals and oil have, it literally deoxygenates the water. In other words, fish live underwater. The aquatic animals live underwater, but they still breathe oxygen. The fact that they don't live on the land like we do doesn't mean they don't breathe oxygen. They receive the oxygen in the form that their respiratory system was intended by the Creator to give it to them. So the waters are being deoxygenated. Number two, you have the dispersant. The dispersant called corrected is truth. What it does is it breaks down the oil so that the oil is so that the oil is water soluble. In other words, the oil isn't gone. The oil has been broke down to its least common chemical component to where it doesn't separate from the water. And so now it turns out so that all these how can I put it? The sea, that ecosystem, the ocean ecology is literally going to be destroyed. It's being destroyed and contaminated. So there was a time when you could take this oil and wash it off of something. But because it's water soluble now, it's going to be absorbed into organic substances. It's going to be absorbed into listen, let's talk about the floor bed of the ocean. It's going to be absorbed into the sea vegetation, the coral reefs, the estuaries, all the things that make up that ocean ecosystem are going to be affected by that. So when it says that that 1/3 of the animals, you're going to notice a lot with time. It's going to take time because the Most High is not doing this overnight. You're going to notice deteriorating of the water. It's already happening. I mean, business is bad in the Gulf. Not only was the Gulf region a tourist attraction, a big money tourist attraction, it also was a provider, a major provider, a source of seafood of provisions for the United States. So you're talking about a big blow to what? The food industry. You're talking about a devastating blow to the American food supply. Now, we're not even talking about all the YouTube clips where you can go, and I even have an article here where actually I'm going to give you the title. I'm not going to read it. It's quite an extensive article, but the title of it is called Deadly Downpour at Columbus. Now, it's talking about Columbus, North Dakota. In other words, and this took place on the 4th of July weekend. The article was posted into the Minute News, which is the name of it's called the MinuteDailyNews.com. Minute being the major city that's in North Dakota that this article, this journalist industry, this journalist office. Anyway, it tells you about how this place, I guess a tourist site, a recreation site, where they had a rain that happened on the just before the 4th of July, and they got there. The people came up literally with the intention of fishing and having a good old time doing all the different, eco recreation system that they do, and all the fish were dead. Literally, I'm going to read a portion of it. Like I said, it says normally the 4th of July weekend at Short Creek Dam is a joyous and festive occasion. It wasn't this year when local Columbus Sportsman Club member Shannon Burrow went to Short Creek last Friday morning to mow the campground in preparation for the big weekend, talking about the 4th of July weekend. He discovered what he described as a sickening scene. It just made me ill. The whole shoreline was pretty much solid with dead fish, and it was stinking like a lagoon, said Burrell. It was just a disaster, a disaster. I've never seen anything like it. Now, just so that you know, this place, Short Creek Dam Recreation Area, is in Columbus, North Dakota. And then when you read the whole article, it lets you know it rained and it killed all the fish, and the place, all the lakes and the water and the reservoir. When I say the reservoir, meaning the reservoir is a source where literally the people where the townspeople get their water from. It had a thick sheen on it. Okay? Matter of fact, I am going to read some more. It says Short Creek Dam Recreation Area is located approximately 7 miles north of Columbus, North Dakota, that is. The reservoir covers 108 acres and entertains everything from fishermen to jet skiers. That wasn't the case over the 4th. Nobody went swimming. Nobody, said Burrell. We had 30 to 40 campers out here. Normally it's hundreds and thousands. It said, and tents, and everybody stayed on shore. The water was the color of tea on Friday, and now Wednesday it is black coffee, and getting darker every day. A heavy downpour hit the Columbus area last week, causing rapid and extensive runoff into Short Creek. The reservoir rose quickly. In other words, this water, this black rain water, was actually coming down into the reservoir. In other words, this town, Columbus's water supply. The reservoir rose quickly and topped the spillway. While it is believed the deluge triggered the fish kill, the precise cause has yet to be determined. Like the fish was dying before. Like it rained before and the fish died. In other words, they're hesitant to say that this is a result of the waters that are actually through the process of condensation and evaporation taken up from the Gulf, and when it rains in the Ohio Valley and all throughout the South and up north, that it literally precipitates the water that was evaporated and condensed, from the Gulf. And that's what's taking place. Okay, the precise cause has yet to be determined. The Water Quality Division of the State Health Department first learned of the problem late Wednesday and made arrangements to dispatch officials to the scene. So the whole point is you're going to begin to see more devastation. It's going to be gradual, but the time is going to come. Read on down. I'm going to show you in the scriptures. Go ahead.
Revelation chapter 9 and verse 9. And the third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died.
Go ahead.
And the third part of the ships were destroyed.
Now, do you have an article or something about how the ships, because the scriptures say that not only, because when it says the third part, all it's saying is that all water life pertaining that exists within that particular body of water was going to be destroyed. Now, it said a third part of the ships, which really is to say the ships that deal and do business and that navigate in these waters are going to be destroyed. We got an article on that too. Go ahead, brother.
As a matter of fact, it's a YouTube video. So if you go into YouTube and search for Corexit is eating through boats in the Gulf, and at 4 minutes and 1 second, you see a picture of a boat or of a ship being eaten up by the oil.
Go ahead.
And also at 3 minutes and 4 seconds, it says almost all the people that had worked on Exxon Valdez oil spill are now dead.
Well, yeah. Well, what's happening is exactly. Well, we'll get to that. Hold on.
Okay.
We'll get to that. Don't. You got to keep that article. Okay. Read that verse again. Read the verse in the scripture.
Revelation chapter 8 and verse 9. And the third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died.
So it's talking about literally the sea creatures that literally live in those affected waters are going to be down up. So you're going to start seeing dead fish wash ashore on the eastern seaboard. Watch. You listen. You can do YouTube and Google searches and you'll already find them. Dolphins.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Certain types of sharks. Different type of mammals. As a matter of fact, there's one particular clip where you can go to and you'll see that sharks are staying closer to the shoreline because the ocean, the Gulf waters were being deoxygenated. And so there was one guy that had a clip, and literally around his boat he was just counting sharks. Because normally sharks don't deal along the shores in shallow water. You know what I'm saying? But because of what was taking place and all the damage that is causing the deoxygenation of the Gulf, animals are coming in closer to the shores. But what stopped that? The sea life from coming closer to the shores was the currents was finally bringing all the petroleum into the shores, so there was nowhere that they could go. So, like I said, all these animals that dwell in this particular ecosystem is going to be dying. It says the boats that are navigating are being destroyed, and like you said, there was an article on that the brother just called out. Go ahead.
Verse 10. And the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third.
Now, when it say a star fell, this is John looking to in the heavens, the Most High literally giving him a vision. And when he say that a star, it was no stars don't fall. The scriptures tell you that when the Most High put the stars up, it says none of them shall faint in their course. But he saw an event that basically resulted in what? Read it again.
And the third angel sounded, and they fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers, and upon the fountains of waters.
Now let me say this. What it's talking about there is as a result of what's taking place in the Gulf and how the currents are going to all carry these toxins. It's going to the toxins are going to, how can I put it? The ocean is going to be contaminated. We're talking about specifically and initially the Atlantic Ocean, but then it won't be long before the ocean, that ocean's corresponding bodies of waters and those bays and gulfs and straits and their corresponding rivers are going to be affected. And I'm going to show you why. In Ecclesiastes in the Bible, chapter 1 and verse 7, it tells you what takes place and where the rivers get their water and what is the relationship that exists between rivers, streams, and oceans. You got that?
Yep.
Ecclesiastes chapter 1, and verse 7. Read that.
All the rivers run into the sea.
Listen to this. All the rivers run into the sea. Now, man may not be able to go and calculate it, but so when you deal with the Mississippi, when you deal with the Colorado, when you deal with the Rio Grande, when you deal with all of these rivers, not just in the North American continent, this is how the Lord made the world. It says all the rivers go where?
Into the sea. Yet the sea is not full.
But why is it that the sea doesn't overflow? Continue.
Unto the place from whence the rivers come.
Unto the place from where the rivers came, go ahead.
Thither they return again.
In other words, the rivers may dump off into the ocean, but there are conduits through which the rivers also are replenished. There's a cycle where the rivers lead to the major bodies of water, and then the different and corresponding and merging currents take the waters on their course, the salinated waters, and then there are conduits through which the rivers receive their waters from these major bodies of water, these oceans and these seas. So the point is, if you got that cycle going, you understand? And the Most High said the third part, that Atlantic Ocean is going to be contaminated, but then the following event is going to result in what? The rivers, read that again, verse 9. The second half, or read the whole verse.
Okay. Ecclesiastes chapter 1 and verse 7 from the top.
I want the one in Revelation.
Or Revelation.
Yeah. We're going to show you.
Revelations chapter 8 and verse 9. And the third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died. And the third part of the ships were destroyed.
Go ahead.
And the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers.
Now it's telling you, when it said the third part of the rivers, it's referring to the rivers that are fed, that correspond to this major body of water. In other words, the Atlantic Ocean and its what? And its corresponding waters. Matter of fact, let me do this. I'm going to tell you which waters eventually are going to be affected, because these waters are the Atlantic Ocean's corresponding bodies of water. Literally, you have nothing more than the surrounding seas and bays, being the Mediterranean Sea, the Black Sea, the Baltic Sea, the North Sea, the Norwegian, Greenland Sea, and the Caribbean Sea. And then the bays are the Baffin and the Hudson Bay. And then the Gulf of Mexico, which is the source of where the problem is coming from. The Atlantic Ocean is being fed its contaminants by the Gulf of Mexico. So when it says, and the rivers and the smaller bodies of water, you can look forward to all those bodies of water eventually, with time. Like I said, the Most High, he's literally slowly breaking down this empire. And as a result, women and men, in other words, it's going to affect the human species, so to speak. Read on down, brother.
Revelations chapter 8 and verse 11. And the name of the star is called Wormwood.
Now, that's how you know it wasn't a star, because there is no star called wormwood. Wormwood is literally a wood. Down here in Spanish, we take it whenever we get amoeba. It's called a hango. So you call it wormwood in English, you call it a hango in Spanish, and in Russian it's called Chernobyl. Bitter. It means literally wormwood. In other words, the Most High is saying that the initial event, which was this mountain-like structure that was burning, that was cast into the sea, that initially caused the contaminating of this water, is eventually going to lead to what? It's eventually going to lead to the contaminating of the rivers. You understand? That's what it's going to happen. Read that part again.
Revelations chapter 8 and verse 11. From the top.
Go ahead.
And the name of the star is called Wormwood.
In other words, wormwood isn't a star. All you got to do, matter of fact, this is what you need to do. Go do a Google on wormwood. Wormwood is actually a bark. It's a tree. Wormwood literally is used down here among the natives and ourselves is like if you get it's used to treat dysentery. It's used to treat severe diarrhea and dysentery. It literally kills the amoeba. It kills the single cell organism that causes that. But when you drink it, if you haven't drunk a hangover, you will prefer to keep the diarrhea. That's how bad it tastes. You'll go with diarrhea for about 6 or 7 days before you finally break, because you'll be losing all your weight. Read on down, brother. Well, listen, let's do this. This is where I want you to go from there. It says that it's called wormwood, right?
Yes.
Read on down.
And the third part of the waters became wormwood.
In other words, this is talking about eventually the waters that men drink, the waters that we use domestically. You know what I'm saying? Taking baths, taking showers, cooking food are going to be contaminated. Like I said, I ain't saying it's going to happen by next week, but let me say this. It's already happening in the Gulf region. It's already happening in the southeastern portion of the United States. Go check out your YouTube clips. Go see about how oil rain is falling in North Carolina. Like I said, referring back to that article that I read a while back, the Minute Post, I'm going to read it again, thank you, bro. It says the MinuteDailyNews.com. Minute being M-I-N-O-T, not minute as in a minute, you know, like time, but minot, as in, I might even be pronouncing it wrong. It might be minot. M-I-N-O-T, dailynews.com, posted July 8th, and the title of this article is Deadly Downpour at Columbus. And it tells you the water contaminated what? It contaminated Columbus's reservoir. A reservoir is a body that literally feeds like a city or a state region. So people are going to be getting sick. Go ahead, brother.
And the name of the star is called wormwood. And the third part of the waters became wormwood.
Go ahead.
And many men died of the waters because they were made bitter.
Now just wait and see. Now the funny thing is, many men died. They're not going to just be dying because of having drank them. Remember, you have all of these. What are the fishermen doing? The people that made a living. The people that made a living off of the Gulf ecosystem. The fishers, the shrimpers, the people that dealt with the thing that you're supposed to eat, the clams, the oysters. All of those people have been converted from their initial occupation to being what? Cleanup workers for BP. Did you know that? Now, there was another oil spill that took place off the coast near Alaska, which was back in the 80s, the Exxon Valdez. And not only, let me say this, the issue that happened, and do this research, do a research on Exxon Valdez workers. None of the workers lived past the age of 51. And it's been reported recently that all the workers that helped in the cleanup process with the oil spill of the Exxon Valdez died. None of them made it past 51. Now it says that the Exxon Valdez, it got to a point during this episode where the spill, the Gulf volcano, oil volcano, was being measured in the amounts and increments of how many Exxon Valdezes. Did you ever see those? They were like, yeah, well, today it makes about 30 Exxon Valdezes. No, it'll blow that one out. Yeah. So if all the workers died that cleaned up and that helped with the cleanup process of the Exxon Valdez oil spill during the 80s, then how much more severe is it going to be? One guy shot himself in the head. Shot himself in the head on his boat. Couldn't take it no more. Working for BP. So the seeds of this calamity, the seeds of this plague have just been planted, and they have yet to come to their maximum fruition. You're going to see it. Okay, what you got there? You want to read off some things?
Yeah. Well, on YouTube, there's another video which basically details what Kawakab was just talking about in terms of these cleanup workers dying. So if you search for urgent, MSNBC reporting that corrects it is killing cleanup workers.
Right. Now, this is major mainstream news. MSNBC reporting that the corrected, which corrected is the dispersant, the chemical dispersant that's being used to supposedly clean up the oil spill. And it isn't cleaning it up. What it's doing it's like if you got some wood and you want to clean it up, you throw it on the fireplace. You ain't cleaning it up, you burning it. In other words, you'll still see it there in the form of ashes. Well, that is a basic, not as accurate an analogy, but it is basic what's taking place. The dispersant is doing nothing more than changing the form of oil from its immergible form with water to being water soluble, so that the chemicals, the petrochemicals, are still there, but they can mix on a molecular level now with the water. All right? Now, this is what I want to do. We're going to go from here to Isaiah chapter 19, and we're going to show you. This is what the Most High planned. Now, Isaiah is going to refer, well, let's read it. Isaiah chapter 19, and we're going to start off at verse 1. Go ahead.
Isaiah chapter 19 and verse 1. The burden of Egypt. Behold, the Lord rideth upon a swift cloud.
Now stop. When it says the burden of Egypt, it's talking about the grief, the calamity that the Most High is going to bring to Egypt. Now, when you say Egypt, we're going to go to Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 28 and show you what Egypt, verse 68. Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 68, and show you exactly what it is when it says Egypt. Egypt is a spiritual / code name for America. Read that, brother.
Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 68.
The reason we go in is to show you, to remind you, that back in the day when the Most High brought our forefathers out of Egypt, he warned us when he gave us the law that if we didn't follow the laws, that a host of curses would be thrust upon us, and one of those curses was that we would go into slavery again. But he didn't say slavery. Read on down. Read what he said. Go ahead.
And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships.
He said the Most High would cause us to come to Egypt again with ships. And when you look at, matter of fact, now what I want you to do, hold that aside, get that Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, and let's read what the definition of Egypt is, so the listeners can understand what's being said before we break down Isaiah chapter 19. All right?
Okay.
Go to Egypt. Because what it's talking about, like I said, biblically, it's symbolic of America. It's symbolic, for the most part, of the places where the Lord's people was taken more recently into captivity on ships. You got that?
Yeah.
Read it, brother.
This comes from the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary.
Go ahead.
Egypt, Coptic land, from the Hebrew name Mizraim.
Originally, the name of the land of Egypt was called Mizraim, and Mizraim had a meaning. That word Mizraim meant the following. Go ahead.
Which means shut in.
Meaning to be shut in, to be closed in. Go ahead.
Restraint.
To be restrained, means to have your movement restricted. Go ahead.
Misery.
In other words, and while you're being shut in and having your movement restricted, you're miserable. Go ahead.
Tribulation.
Meaning you're being put under great physical duress. That's what tribulation is. In other words, we call it hell in the ghetto. Go ahead.
And distress.
And distress, meaning, in other words, in need of help. When you say, send out a distress signal. Send out a distress signal. So, like I said, it means tribulation, distress, shut in, misery, and restraint. Now, go back to Deuteronomy. That's what it said. Now, like I said, we're going to read this so that you can see why the Most High is talking in Isaiah about America, but calling it Egypt. Go ahead.
Deuteronomy 28 and verse 68. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships.
Now, all of these brothers and sisters that got brought in from the time that the Portuguese began to bring us in from areas like Angola and Mozambique, all the way up until the time that the Spanish and the English began to bring us in the 1600s, how was it that we got here but on ships? So the Most High said, the Lord shall bring thee, in other words, and the places that he brought us to was the America, the North America, Central America, and South America for the most part. And we got taken all up in the other areas also. But those caravans went literally from the continent of Africa, caravans on up through Northern Africa and on up into Asia, Central Asia, East Asia. We went everywhere, but particularly on ships, it's talking about the Americas. Go ahead, brother. So now that we know that Egypt is referring to the place where the blacks in America were brought on ships. Let's find out what he has to say about this place. Go ahead.
Isaiah chapter 19 and verse 1. The burden of Egypt, behold, the Lord rideth upon a swift cloud.
Go ahead.
And shall come into Egypt, and the idols of Egypt shall be moved at his presence.
Go ahead.
And the heart of Egypt shall melt in the midst of it.
Now this is literally talking about the final attack. When he said the Most High is going to come on a cloud, the Lord shall come on a cloud, it's not talking about he's going to come on a rain cloud. It's not talking about he's going to come on a thunder cloud. He's not going to come on, the cloud is a symbolic word that literally means the Most High's vehicle. They're referred to as clouds, they're referred to as chariots of fire, they're referred to as whirlwinds. What it's talking about is the final, how can I put it, Christ's second appearance. But read on down.
Verse 2. And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, and they shall fight everyone against his brother, and everyone against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom.
Now, listen, we're going to come back to that. I just want to show you what's going to take place with the waters. Jump down to verse 5.
Okay. Isaiah chapter 19 and verse 5. And the waters shall fail from the sea.
In other words, just like we read in Revelation, when it said the waters shall fail, in other words, they're not going to have access to those waters. The waters are going to be unusable. Go ahead.
And the river shall be wasted and dried up.
Go ahead. Listen, didn't it? I want you to say we are, but didn't Revelation chapter 8 and verse 9 on down talk about how not only was the seas going to be messed up, but the rivers also?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Verse 6. And they shall turn the rivers far away, and the brooks of defense shall be emptied and dried up.
Go ahead.
The reeds and flags shall wither.
When you talk about the reeds and flags, that's talking about reeds and flags today are equivalent of what? Those are the aspect that's called the reefs, the estuaries. In other words, they're not going to, because this is where people actually do their shrimping. You know, if you know the South area, this is where people be doing all that crawdad. They know what they eat. They use all of those abominable creatures for their gumbos and their soups and their goulashes. Okay, go ahead.
Verse 7. The paper reeds by the brooks, by the mouth of the brooks, and everything sown by the brooks shall wither.
And you can go get YouTube clips on that about how along the shore, you see the base of all the plants along the shore is deep red, and then at the top of them they're all dead. And then a lot of the shores, they're dying to the degree where it's literally breaking up the beach. It's breaking up the shores of the beach. Because people don't know that that marshland, that's what they call the marshland. That marshland, literally, it's the actual vegetation that keeps the shore intact. If you were to come and just and get rid of all of that vegetation, that stuff would dissolve. Go ahead.
Be driven away and be no more.
Continue.
The fishers also shall mourn.
Wait a minute. Ain't that what we seeing on the news? It said the fishers also shall mourn. Go ahead.
And all they that cast angle into the brooks shall lament.
When it says cast angle, it's talking about how they cast. It's going to break it down. It tells you about how the fishers fish with nets. Go ahead. In other words, all their fishing tools and their instruments. Continue.
And they that spread nets upon the waters.
And they that spread nets upon the waters. Go ahead.
Shall languish.
Go ahead.
Moreover,
when it says language literally means to weaken, to be broken in spirit. And they are. Like I said, listen, go Google this. Go Google it, please. A fisher, ex-fisher, BP worker commits suicide, kills himself, because that's what they did. That's what the guy did. Read that verse. I want you to read verse 8 again.
The fishers also shall mourn.
Now, you can't tell me you're not seeing the news. All the fishers mourning. Go ahead.
And all they that...
When it says mourn, it's talking about the fishermen complaining. That's what they're doing. Now, this company, BP, is supposedly trying to compensate them. But one thing that you can say is that the actual fishermen, they didn't have a hazardous job. You know, we got articles here that's talking about how the cleanup workers, and when they say cleanup workers, a lot of those people who were fishermen are working now cleaning up because their means of sustenance was taken away. So when they say the fishers shall complain, this is what they're complaining about, that the beaches and hold hands. It used to be so beautiful down here. Now look all coming. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about how they fed their families, how they put their children through school, how they paid their bills. Their whole way of supporting themselves have been destroyed, and now they receive, let me say this, they receive so-called compensation under a hazardous condition. They run around and cleaning up all type of toxins, and let me say this, BP, the corporation, won't let them use those respirators. You know those white respirators that you cover yourself up with so as to not inhale contaminants and hazardous particles? They won't do that because it looks bad for public relations, and it insinuates that there's toxins, and it makes them liable for the people that get sick. And that's what the officials. A matter of fact, hand me that article, not the article, but the clip when you talked about the girl who's what is her name?
Kendra.
Yeah, let me say this. There's a young lady by the name of Kendra Arneson. All you got to do is go to YouTube and type in Kendra with an I, Kindra, Arneson, Arneson, on worst case VP blowout scenario. And she'll break it down because she was the actual VP liaison, community liaison. She was one of the members in the community that VP let in the meetings on how they were going to deal with this catastrophe. And they thought that letting her in would buy her loyalty. And she been telling it all. So it's going to tell you, in other words, she gives you one of the reasons on why the fishermen are complaining. People are dying. People are getting sick. Go ahead, brother. Read on down.
Isaiah chapter 19 and verse 8. The fishers also shall mourn, and all they that cast angle into the brooks shall lament. And they that spread nets upon the waters shall languish.
In other words, all the people who have a living in that sea life, a living in fishing, a living in stripping, a living in crawdadding, and let me show you how this affects, how this is a chain reaction. If the people that can't fish, if the people that used to fish can no longer fish, the people whom they fish for are being hurt also. All the chains of restaurants, all the people all the businesses who they provided for, their businesses are going out. And this is that's why now look, finish that verse. Is that the end of that verse? Yeah. Now I want you to jump back to the earlier verse where the Most High said he was going to turn Egyptian against Egyptian. Was that verse 3?
Yes.
Read that. Or is it verse 2?
Verse 2.
Read that.
Isaiah chapter 19 and verse 2. And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians.
Now let me say this. When it says Egyptians against Egyptians, remember, Egypt is symbolic for America. So how is it that the Most High is going to use this type of catastrophe and others that are to come as a means to cause dissent or division between Americans? Well, let's go into it. You have a lot of the state officials. You have a lot of the parish, officials that are from Louisiana, that are from Mississippi, that are complaining that the federal government, that don't make no sense. The federal government would not allow them to go out and begin to prevent the stuff from coming in shore. When the federal government literally have no control. You have to forgive me because it don't make no damn sense. The federal government have no say-so on what the states can do in an emergency. It's really what? The governor of the state. You have the governors of the state that literally stood down at the behest of the federal government, at the behest of Barack. Let me say this. You had countries whose oil industries were experts at cleanup. There was a specific Dutch company who was an expert at these type of calamities, who President Barack Hussein Obama, the terrorist, who black people seem to be in love with, would not allow to come in and do what it specializes in doing. In other words, it was intended for this accident to become what? To become a catastrophe. That's what it was. Because all the countries who actually have a better record in oil cleanup. BP is into drilling. They're into drilling oil. They're not into cleanup. They're not into waste cleanup. Read on down, brother. So when it says the Most High is going to set these people against themselves, it's going to be behind issues like this. So you got the states, the certain areas in Texas, certain areas in Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Alabama and Florida, who they are at odds now. You have state officials that are in contention with federal government officials. Go ahead, brother.
Isaiah 19 and verse 2 from the top.
Verse 3. Oh, is that verse 2?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, and they shall fight everyone against his brother.
Yep.
And everyone against his neighbor. City against city, and kingdom against kingdom.
Now let me say this. You're going to see it, man. Matter of fact, like I said, remember I said we were going to use this to springboard us into other areas. How is it? I'm going to show you. In the southeastern part of the United States, you have the state officials and the state government that is in contention with the federal United States federal government over the oil spill issue. But when you go to the southwestern part of the United States, did you know I saw an article today where Arnold Schwarzenegger finally deployed a whole bunch of American troops down on the Mexican border? In Arizona, the governor of Arizona recently passed legislation, immigration legislation, and it has resulted in what? It has resulted in contention between what? Between the state government of Arizona and the federal government of the United States. Now it turns out that Barack and the United States Justice Department is literally having a lawsuit against the state of Arizona for the legislation that they passed on Arizona on immigration. But they failed to give a damn about the fact that there's a drug war going on all along the border, the southwestern border with Mexico, where it's turned out now that the killing, the kidnapping, and the threats to different sheriffs and law enforcement agents, officials, have reached all the way up into just a couple of miles, only a couple of miles south of Phoenix. And Phoenix is way up north in the state, man. So they're not reporting all of those issues. So in other words, what you're seeing, let me say this, you guys got to start going into the certain news sources that are considered alternative news, because that's where you're going to find the meat of your information. That's where you're going to get a more accurate handle on what's really taking place on the state of affairs in America. Because whether you realize it or not, America is literally in the, you have 46 of the states that are on the point of declaring bankruptcy. You have about 36 of those states that are beginning to evoke their 10th Amendment rights, which are issues of sovereignty. In other words, they want to be able to maintain their state sovereignty with minimal, if any, federal intervention. These are the circumstances from which civil wars always erupt, where people don't really know it. That's why the Most High say he's going to set the Egyptians against the Egyptians. Read on down, brother. Okay. You were at verse 2, right?
Yeah, I'm on verse 3 now.
Go ahead.
And the spirit of Egypt shall fail in the midst thereof.
When it says the spirit of Egypt, it's talking about the unity that unified. Like, for instance, when 9/11 took place, you ain't never seen Americans so unified since World War II. Hell, they weren't unified over the Vietnam War. They wasn't unified over the Korean War. But when them boys came, our boys came back home from you, they was proud. But America haven't been unified since the days of what? Since the days of the attack on Pearl Harbor. You understand? So when an issue like 9/11 popped up, that unified this country. That unified this place called America. Well, the Most High said that he was going to what? He was going to cause the spirit of Egypt to fail in the midst of. In other words, he was going to break down that unified spirit. They're coming at, and how do we know it's saying that? Because we just read in verse 2, he's turning them against themselves. When it says, kingdom, and they shall fight every one against his brother, every one against his neighbor, city against city. What happens when the Barack Hussein, what's his name again? Barack Hussein Obama? Curious George. What happens when he, along with the Justice Department and the Supreme Court, who they now got in their pocket, finally declare what Arizona did as unconstitutional concerning the immigration law? What happens if Arizona and other states like it and other governments like it decide to decide to be resolute in their legislation on immigration? Something's going to have to erupt. Now, you know the federal government have what? Have troops. But the state government have National Guard troops, which conveniently and almost calculatedly they've been sending over to where? To Iraq and Afghanistan, and pretty soon to Iran. Read on down, brother.
And I will destroy the counsel thereof.
When they say the counsel, meaning all the decisions that they try to make for the better of the nation, the Most High's intent is that the nation be destroyed. Go ahead.
And they shall seek to the idols and to the charmers and to them that have familiar spirits.
This is talking about all the dynamics that take place in the White House, how they deal with soothsayers and monthly prognosticators and what do they call them? Astrologers. Matter of fact, you guys, all the listeners, do a Google on President Reagan seeking advice from astrologers. President Reagan didn't make any decisions without having conferred to his astrologers first. And it's the same now. So that's why the Most High said they're going to seek to their idol. Go ahead.
And to the wizards. And the Egyptians will I give over into the hand of a cruel lord.
When it said a cruel lord, if you notice, is the word Lord in your Bible capitalized? Okay, because when it says the cruel lord, the Most High is talking about all the different, how can I put it? Like, for instance, you got the President of the United States that doesn't seem to be what? That doesn't seem to be performing the wishes of the people. You know, the people supposedly democratically elected him, but the will of the people, the will of the body elect is not being performed. That's what I mean when they say a cruel Lord. In other words, everything that American leaders are going to do is going to be in the worst interest of America. Like, for instance, the stimulus package. This dude went and signed the stimulus package, and what did the stimulus do but stimulate a damn depression? That's all it stimulated. It stimulated more job loss. It stimulated. I will show you what he do. What Barack Hussein Obama been stimulating. He been his promise. You can go to YouTube clips and see where he promised. The first thing he was going to do was bring the troops home, and the first thing he did was send them by the thousands more. The first thing he did was deploy over 32,000 more to Afghanistan, and then he authorized the unmanned drone attacks on Pakistan, who they officially ain't at war with. You understand? He done went and signed sanctions against Iran. So when he said cruel Lord, literally it's saying all the things that this specific leader is going to do for this country is going to be in the country's, it's not going to be in the country's best interest. It's going to be in the country's worst interest. It's going to be to the country's detriment. Let me say this, and that we're not just talking about Barack Hussein Obama. This began big time with Bill Clinton. This began big time with Bush. In other words, with the signing of all of these different trade agreements, NAFTA and GATT. You know what I mean? And the SPP. So, what did NAFTA and GATT do for the United States? But take America's industry-based jobs, America's industry for the most part, America's production, and ship it overseas to people. You had American citizens that, for the most part, made a living putting cars together, made a living made a living in computation, you know what I mean, putting computers and computer software, computer programs, all that stuff is done overseas. These people made a living in the timber industry. Now, the majority of America under a process called Agenda 21, you know, which is called rewilding, the rewilding of America. In other words, they want to take it back and turn it into a big old forest and just have areas of concentrated metropolitan cities where people are crammed in there. All of these things is what America's presidents have been signing. When they signed the security of the SPP, the Security and Prosperity, how's it called? The Security and Prosperity Bill, it literally on the 5th, this was in 2005, in March of 2005, in Waco, Texas, at Baylor University. America literally gave way, the American president signed on and gave way to an entity known as the North American Union, which literally merged Mexico, Canada, and the United States. And that's why when you look at what's taking place, and when you look at the banker bailouts, and when you look at the American government taking over the automotive industry, you look at America forcing itself into the healthcare industry, you understand what's taking place? The basic living standard of America is being brought down to that of a third world country. And all you got to do is go and Google the term tent cities, T-E-N-T cities, and you'll see that this is a phenomenon that's taking place as a result of the American middle class being erased. Read that verse again about a cruel Lord.
Isaiah chapter 19 and verse 4. And the Egyptians would give over into the hand of a cruel Lord.
Yeah, when that Moses said the Egyptians, you're going to give over to the hand of a cruel Lord, it ain't just talking about the fact that other countries have America's downfall in hand, like China. It's talking about the leaders of this country itself. The leaders of this country itself are making all the decisions that seem to be destroying and deteriorating the living standard of its inhabitants. People can't find jobs. Not only that, look at recently, from the time of Clinton, and really was done during the time of President the second Bush, all the legislation as a post 9/11 that just stripped the Americans of their civil liberties. Literally, you know, construction companies like Halliburton and KBR, Kellogg Brown and Root was once referred to, which was a Halliburton subsidiary, literally being given $285 million, or was it billion? $285 billion to refurbish old World War II concentration camp and detainment centers and build new ones all across America for events like Katrina hurricane. And you see what happened there. So when the Most High says he's going to put a cruel Lord over these people, he's talking about the leader of these people now. They're making decisions and legislation that's to the detriment of this country. And these are the things where the Most High said we were supposed to be looking for, what Christ said we were supposed to be looking for, so that we would know. When I say we, I'm talking about us Israelites all over the world, the brothers and sisters, blacks and Hispanics, Native Americans, just to sum it up briefly, of Negroid and Indian descent. We ain't talking about them white people that grew up on a reservation who's the descendant of a cavalryman that raped a Native American woman, got a hook nose and wear his hair in two braids down the side and say he's an Indian. We ain't talking about them. We're literally talking about the true Native Americans, the true Hispanic so-called people. They're not even Hispanic. They were Native Americans also who were colonized and conquered by the Spanish, so therefore they're called Hispanic. All of our people, these are the events that we've been longing for, and they're happening now every day exponentially. There was a time when back in the 80s, when I first came into the truth, late 80s, was events like this happened, you know, once every 2 or 3 years, and then died down. It took another 3 years for something of this magnitude to take place. Where you at, brother? Go ahead.
And a fierce king shall rule over them, saith the Lord of hosts.
Now listen, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go to, in the Apocrypha. As a matter of fact, what I want to do, I want to go to Revelation chapter Revelation chapter 16. I want you to start off at chapter 9 and start Revelation chapter 9 and verse 12. We're going to show you along, because we got 45 minutes left. We also going to take time out right now and open up the lines if anybody wants to call. We got 45 minutes left in the show. We're going to continue. We're going to go down the path now of not only showing the significance of the Gulf of Mexico disaster, but now we're going to show you what's also other plagues that are happening, particularly going down the path of what's taking place militarily, what's taking place with the American Army and all its, quote, coalition of the willing. That's written right along in Revelations with this event that's taking place in the Gulf. So I want to start off, is that Revelation chapter 9 and what verse? Verse 13?
Verse 14.
Revelation chapter 9 and verse 13, and if any of our callers have questions, you're free to call in now and we'll address them. Meanwhile, until callers pop up, we're going to go ahead and continue down this road. Go ahead.
Revelation chapter 9 and verse 13. And the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar.
The four horns of the golden altar literally is talking about, this is a scenario that John saw of the actual hierarchy and the setup before the throne of the Most High in the spiritual realm. So when he said before this structure called the golden altar, it's talking about from where the Most High give his orders to the angels, and then the angel give their orders to the angels under them for them to be carried out on the earth. Go ahead.
Which is before the Most High.
Saying
to the sixth angel, which had the trumpet, loose the four angels.
When it said loose, meaning there are four angels that are to be released. Go ahead.
Which are bound in the great river Euphrates.
Now, does anyone understand or have any idea of basic geography? When the scriptures say, "Loose the angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates," the Euphrates River literally runs from south to north through the country called Iraq. The ancient days, it was actually physically, geographically known as Babylon. So when it says loose, in other words, the Most High have given an order that those angels go out and do his bidding. Now, what was the intention of releasing these angels? We're going to continue reading.
Verse 15. And the four angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day.
In other words, go ahead.
And a month and a year.
Read that again from the top. And the fourth angel were loosed.
And the four angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour.
In other words, these four angels were released with the intention of, go ahead,
prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year for to slay the third part of men.
In other words, the intention that these angels were released was to create a circumstance upon which in one year, in a specified month, in a specified day of that month, and in a specified hour of that day, where the third part of men are going to be destroyed. Now, when he said the third part, he's not talking about third as in 3%. And when you read the scriptures, man is divided up into three classifications. In the scriptures, you have the sons of men, which also are referred to, generally speaking, as Gentiles or heathen. Then you have that broken down into the sons of the wicked, meaning among the Gentiles, there's one group of people who are classified as the sons of the wicked. And then you have the sons of the righteous, which are Israelites. All Israelites in the world are considered the sons of the Most High, the sons of the righteous. So when he said a third part of men, this is not about bringing down the nations. This is about bringing down Esau. Esau is on top. Esau is referred to as the sons of the wicked in the scriptures. Read on down, brother.
Verse 16.
Read that verse from 13 again now.
Okay. Revelation chapter 9 and 13. And the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar, which is before the Most High.
Go ahead.
Saying to the sixth angel, which had the trumpet, loose the four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates.
Go ahead. In other words, in this region, the Most High have it designed so that there be angels that move and start stirring the minds of men, start stirring the minds of kings to lead toward this great event. We're going to get some more in Revelation chapter 16 as soon as we finish this. Go ahead.
It's verse 15. And the four angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year for to slay the third part of men.
Now it's going to get you more detail in Revelation chapter 16. So go to Revelation chapter 16, and we're going to read verses 12 through 14.
Revelation chapter 16.
The same event. Go ahead.
Verse 12. And the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates. And the water thereof was dried up.
Once again, the sixth angel, when it says poured his vial upon the great river Euphrates, he's not saying he actually went from heaven, poured some water on the Euphrates and caused rivers. It's talking about, when it said dry, mean a path. The Most High is creating a dynamic to direct. Read on down.
That the way of the kings of the east.
That the way of the kings of the east. In other words, the Most High calls in the realm of men these spirits to go and work on the minds of kings with the intention of conducting armed armies toward that place. So now, let me say this. This is what people don't really realize. This took place in 1991. They called it Desert Storm. And it was because supposedly Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. There we are. Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, and the Iraqis needed liberty. So the Americans went down with a force of about 39 nations. Now, it lasted for so many days. You know, they showed television shots of the Iraqis. They just gave up. Didn't even shoot a shot, right? But it turns out more recently what happened. In March of 2003, which ain't so recent anymore, that's like more than 7 years, that what? The Most High literally created, now, I want that one. Do I got that one here? I got it right here. The Most High created a dynamic that right in the heart of where the Euphrates run through, America literally went down with what Bush referred to as President Bush, that is, referred to as a coalition of the willing. And it consisted of countries, for the most part, 50 countries spanning from Europe, Asia, the Americas, and then other areas of the world. Now I'm going to read this list off to you. Read that again. Now first read that. Read that again. Revelation 16 and verse what? 12, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And the sixth angel poured out his vial.
What we're showing you is that along in the midst of this event that's unfolding and that have taken place in the Gulf of Mexico, people ain't even paying attention to what's taking place in the East. It's in a sense, as great an event as it is, it's still in a sense having a distracting effect on greater issues. Like America is slowly crawling toward World War III. Read it, brother.
Revelation chapter 16 and verse 12. And the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east,
with the intention that the kings of the east, go ahead,
might be prepared.
Might be prepared for what? Go ahead.
Verse 13. And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon.
When it says the mouth of the dragon, it's literally talking about the so-called white man. Go ahead.
And out of the mouth of the beast.
The beast is specifically talking about the American military force and the NATO forces. Go ahead.
And out of the mouth of the false prophet.
The false prophet literally is talking about the religious institution headed by the Roman Catholic Church. People don't understand that. So let me say this. How many of us out there and the listeners remember how the people were calling Bush a man of God during the height of the 9/11 attack? During the height, I should say, of the response to having been attacked on 9/11. The post-9/11 dynamic, Bush was heralded as a man of God because the Most High tell when he said a spirit, in other words, this was the propaganda that was being spread. The Most High had a spirit on the world that was receiving all the lies. I would say these people, you have football players. This one cat, Pat Tillman, dude played professional football for the Arizona. Remember, he joined the Marines and got his ass shot off. Yeah, I guess he really. What be happening to? What the hell be happening to people, man? They be watching the movies, right? They be seeing Matt Damon in the green zone. Then they go and join the army thinking they gonna be bulletproof. This dude already had him a secure. You can at least say, had he played it smart, he had a few more years of good living, playing football, hitting helmets and stuff. But him, like so many others, was swept up behind that spirit of propaganda. That's what. Read it again, brother, about the spirit.
Okay, verse 13.
Coming out the mouth.
And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon and out of the mouth of the beast.
The dragon and the beast is talking about the Edomite Empire. We'll put it like that. Really, the Anglo-American Empire and its military force known as NATO. Go ahead.
And out of the mouth of the false prophet.
And the false prophet literally is speaking of the Roman. It's talking about the religious institution headed by the Roman Catholic Church. Go ahead.
For they are the spirits of devils.
When it said they're the spirit of devils, it's talking about they're the spirit of what was the term? Well, listen, we went over it last week, and like I said, I have actually a topic down the line, a show dedicated to explaining what and who the devil really is. When it said they're the spirit of devils, the term devil means false accuser. The term devil means slanderer. So you can't tell me what was it that got America behind going to Afghanistan, but the fact that it was the American media, it was the damn British lapdog for Bush. What was his name? Tony Blair. You know what I'm saying? That was pushing all this. That was pushing all, and the media pushing all the what? That the Arab world had attacked America, had attacked Christendom. That's what the Most High is trying to show us. So in other words, they're in these wars, having falsely accused these other nations of actions that they perpetrated against themselves, with the intention of pulling that American unity behind them. Go ahead, brother.
Working miracles which go forth unto the kings of the earth.
Which go forth to the kings. The intention is that these spirits and these lies and these false accusers drag all kings into doing what? Go ahead.
And of the whole world, to gather them to the battle of that great day of the Most High Almighty.
Of the great day of the Most High of God Almighty. Now I'm going to read them nations. Hell, it said, listen to this. Out of the nations of Europe, along with America, you had the United Kingdom, which is talking about what? For the most part, England, Wales, and Ireland. Oh, say it again.
Mainly England.
Mainly England. Then you got Spain, Portugal, Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Iceland, and then and Italy. Those are the European states that were part of that are currently part of the coalition of the willing. Then you have the Baltic states within Europe, or Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Then you have Central Europe countries that wouldn't participate still, Poland, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Hungary. And then in the area that's referred to as the Balkans, you got Albania, Macedonia, Romania, Bulgaria, Turkey, Croatia, and Slovenia. Then you got the Eastern Europe, Ukraine, and Moldova. Those are the European countries alone that assisted the United States in this demonic endeavor. Then you got the Asian countries, literally Japan, South Korea, Singapore, Philippines, Afghanistan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Marshall Islands, Micronesia, Solomon Islands, Mongolia, Palau, Tonga. Now, what the hell was Tonga? what the hell did this? What I want to know, man. Because I went to school with the Tongans, right? They're like in the family of Samoan, Tonga, Hawaiians, New Zealanders, right? What the hell did the Iraqis do to you? I'm trying to figure the hell out. With Tonga, if you go to Tonga, if you fly over the damn island, it ain't nothing but a volcano with a sidewalk around it. What the hell, you know what I'm saying? What the hell did the damn Arabs do to somebody out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean? Have the Arabs even seen the Pacific Ocean? I'm just asking the question. I'm trying to show you how. But let me say this. If the Tongans, whatever it was the Tongans had to bring to the table, if they didn't, guaranteed America would have flew over that island and dropped a bomb in that one volcano, you know what I'm saying, and tore that island the hell up. They would have used it for the new nuclear testing site like they did during the 50s, the 40s, 50s, and 60s, all the way up to the 70s, when they was tearing up all the Pacific Islands. But let me go back over that again. These are the Asian. I'm sorry, I just got hung up at Asia. I got hung up at Tonga. What the hell did the Arabs do do to the people of Tonga, man? But nevertheless, these are the countries that went. Japan, South Korea, Singapore, Philippines. You know what? This is what I want you to get, man. I want you to real quick go to Revelation chapter 18, put a little marker there, and go to where it says, all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath. Okay? We're reading because the brother just read about how in Revelation chapter 16, verses 12 to 14, that the Most High was going to release spirits, release angels in the Euphrates, that in the region of the Euphrates, that was going to be used with the intention of drawing all the armies there for the great day, the great battle of the God Almighty, I should say, not the God, but God Almighty. And it turns out in Japan, like I said, in Asia, I read the European countries. I'm going to read the Asian countries again. Japan, South Korea, Singapore, Philippines, Afghanistan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Marshall Islands, Micronesia, Solomon Islands, Mongolia, Palau, Tonga, and Thailand. Damn, I got to say the same about Thailand, but let me move on. Then, in the Americas, you got the United States, of course, which was the lead culprit in this endeavor. Then you got, in South and Central America, El Salvador, they like sent 2 people. Both of them got killed the first week. This doesn't make no sense. They sent Colombia, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, the Dominican Republic, and Honduras. Now, what the hell? Let me say this. Who do these people look like when they grow beards? I'm asking you, when you hold up, stop. Now, these are our people. El Salvador, Colombia, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Dominican Republic, and Honduras. They got sent over to Iraq. What the hell? What did they do to them? Then the other countries are Australia, New Zealand, the Middle East, Kuwait, and then the countries of Africa that participated was Eritrea. Like I just found out that's a country right now. You know what I mean? It's so insignificant. Ethiopia, Uganda, Rwanda, and Angola. So what I'm going to show you, this is proof that it's talking about. In other words, all of those countries have the most I said was the way to taking the kings and of the east into the battle of the Lord God Almighty. Now read that Revelation chapter 18 and what verse you got?
Verse 3.
Go ahead.
For all nations.
This is Revelation chapter 18 and verse 3. Go ahead.
For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication.
Because if you ask at least the majority of the conscious members of these militaries, they'll tell you they were recruited to go and help take democracy to Iraq. Yeah. They're trying to, Iraq supposedly, every time they got election, the next day they got bombed. Yeah. Or 2 days before. And remember they supposedly had elections with the guy put up, the puppet president Karzai in Afghanistan. And then what? People get blown the hell up. Now, how you have a president of just a mountainous region? And I'm trying to figure out the president of what? Have you ever been to Afghanistan? I mean, I ain't been there, but hell, I don't plan on going. But I'm saying, how the hell are you going to have a president of Afghanistan? And Afghanistan was just a series of tribes and warlords. Now some nigga come down, he's the president of a bunch of feuding motherfuckers from the time of who? From the time of Alexander the Great. Go do your history. They'll tell you. The region of Afghanistan is referred to as the region, it refers to as the places where armies are swallowed. More recently, the Russians couldn't defeat them during the 80s. The Greeks tried it. The Romans tried it. Every time you go and look at the Spanish Romans, they got to the areas called Parthia, and today that's called Afghanistan, and the stands, they couldn't conquer them regions. But nevertheless, all countries are behind America in what? In the spreading of democracy. Because you know why? Because if you go down the list of all of these countries, for the most part, especially in Asia, Central Europe, the Baltic states, they understand what happens when you don't partake, when you don't play like a team member. Am I wrong or right? What do you think took place in Central Europe? Let me say this. You're talking about the Baltic states and the Balkans in Eastern Europe. They're just glad to come out from under the Soviet Union. We'll send through. And let me say this. Then we got another list of showing you how many soldiers these countries send. It was like just straight. You know how you get moral support? I'm going to show you. Let's read this. You got United States sent 130,000 and counting. You know what I'm saying? Because Barack is keep on sending more troops. The United Kingdom sent 9,000. That's a fun. That means Tony Blair was just following orders. He was just giving moral support. You got Italy. They sent 3,000 people. Come on, man. Is that many people in my family? What the hell is wrong with this dude? Let's get down to the more insignificant ones. Portugal sent 128 people.
Everyone said this and that.
Everybody's, yeah. Latvia sent 120. Slovakia sent everybody but the mayor. They sent 102 people. The Philippines sent 80 people. Because you know they had 81. What's going on, man? And then let me see this. Kazakhstan, all the people that they could pull out the crevices of the mountains turned out to be 25 people. Canada needs their asses whooped. They should have just said, no, we're not going. They sent 31 people. Big as Canada is. Canada sent as many people as Estonia did. What are we trying to show you? These people ain't into this. They're being forced. Because if you believe in a cause, and you know this thing has to be done, and this war on terror have to be used to root out these terrorists, you're going to do what America did. 130,000 troops, man. Read that verse again. Revelation chapter 18 and verse 3. Read that.
For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. And the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her.
Go ahead.
And the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacy.
Now I want you to hold that. Now listen, we're going to show you why is it that the most out of all of these countries that are in this supposedly joint effort, why is it that the United States have sent 130,000 and no one else has sent even 1/3 of that amount? Joel chapter 2, this is a prophecy. The Most High said he is literally removing America's military from her shores so that America can be vulnerable. I'm going to show you that. Read you're in Joel chapter 2, so read verse 20 and read it out.
Joel chapter 2 and verse 20. But I will remove far off from you the northern army.
But the Lord said that he would remove far off from us. In other words, he would remove them out of his sight, the northern army. Now, what is the northern army? Is it talking about, you got, geographically speaking, you have 3 countries that are within the North American continent. They are from north to south, Canada, the United States, and Mexico. But Amayatazai, you and I, we live down here in Central America, Guatemala. Every time people speak in reference to Norteamericanos, who are they referring to?
The Americans.
Only the Americans. Literally. When you talk about Canada, they don't say Norteamericanos, they say Canadienses. Yeah. They call them Canadians. When you refer to Norteamericanos, they're not referring to Mexicans, they call them Mexicanos. So when it says, it's crystal clear that when the Most High said he will remove off the northern army, he's telling you where he's going to move them to. Read it again from the top.
Joel chapter 2 and verse 20. But I will remove far off from you the northern army, and will drive him into a land barren and desolate.
Now, what could be barren and desolate? He's literally talking about what? Iraq, Afghanistan, barren and desolate. Go ahead.
With his face toward the east sea.
When it says his face toward the east sea, in the ancient days, the east sea literally was talking about the Red Sea or the Persian Gulf. In other words, it was east. Those were the greater bodies of water that were east to where Israel or Jerusalem was. Remember, this is an Israelite book. But when you look at the map today, this is where the Most High is saying he's going to send the army to. And today there is a body of water called the East Sea. But guess what the East Sea is known as also? It's known as the Sea of Japan. So when the Most High say he's going to send this dude to the East Sea, we got other scripts, other documents that show you America has bases in 63 countries. America's military bases are in 63 countries. I want you to finish reading that verse. Read it again from the top. Which is what?
Joel chapter 2 and verse 20. But I will remove far off from you the northern army, and will drive him into a land barren and desolate.
And that's why, let me say this. That's why the Most High had America take 100. Let me say this. Go do a search, a Google on what happened to the Gulf War I vets. What happened to the Desert Storm? Did you know that 90% of the troops that were involved in Desert Storm are sick or have died of what they call Gulf War syndrome, having been contaminated and infected by the munitions that were used that were made of the depleted uranium. They've literally been contaminated. Inhaled depleted uranium is nothing more than a byproduct that is the metal, the contaminated metal that is used, that it's the waste of enriched uranium. What they use for, nuclear power or nuclear, I should say nuclear atomic energy, or the bombs, the nuclear armaments. And then all the waste that are left after the uranium-238, 235 have been enriched. They take that waste, the toxic metal, and they make their bullets and bombs and armor, tank armor with it. And that's what the American Army in Gulf War I was using, and that's what they used in Kosovo. That's what they used in the Israelis used it in Gaza and in Lebanon. In other words, the Most High is destroying these troops, but geographically, he's telling you he's shipping them overseas with their face toward the EC. Because, like I said, if you do some geography search, the EC today is known as the Sea of Japan, and America got 2 bases. One of them is in Oklahoma, 3 bases in Japan. One of them is in Oklahoma. No, matter of fact, they got a whole. Do we got that? Or do I got it right here? Look through that. Look through the orange one in the back. Bring the whole. I'm gonna show you where the American bases in Japan are. Okay, we got all these documents. Oh no! I want the other one. That's the one here. Give it to me. America. Let me say this. This is just the Air Force alone. The American Air Force alone is in, they have 3 bases in Afghanistan. They got 2 in Bulgaria. They got 4 in Germany. They got 1 in Greenland. They got 1 in Guam. They got 1 in Italy. They got 3 in Japan. Now, this is just, like I said, this is just Air Force. As a matter of fact, I'm going to say this for a later date. There's a topic on that, man. That's going to go with the breakdown of chapter 2 in Habakkuk, all right? Yeah. That's what that's going to go with. But anyway, finish reading that.
Joel chapter 2 and verse 20.
Go ahead.
But I will remove far off from you the northern army.
The Most High is removing the American military force overseas. Go ahead.
And will drive him into a land barren and desolate.
In a barren and desolate land, we call that the deserts. We know that's the deserts of the Middle and Far East. Go ahead.
With his face toward the east sea.
Go on.
And his hinder parts toward the utmost sea.
Now do a Google search on Bible. Do Bible, utmost sea. And then all sources will take you to that the utmost sea is really talking about the Mediterranean Sea. So when the Most High tells you that his face is going to be toward the east sea and his hinder part is going to be toward the utmost sea, that Most High is telling you where the up and coming theater of war is at. It's encompassed in Asia. And when you think about it, I just got through reading all those places. Matter of fact, let's do that. Give me that list again. I'm going to show you. Now listen to this, brothers and sisters. This is just the United States Air Force bases overseas alone that are in that region. You got in Afghanistan, the Bagram Air Base, the Shindand Air Base, and the Kandahar International Airport. That's under American, That's under America's occupation. Then in Japan, you got Kadena Air Base in Okinawa. You got Misawa Air Base in Misawa, Aomori. And you got Yokota Air Base in Tokyo. In Saudi Arabia, you got Excan Village Air Base, King Abdul Aziz Air Base, King Fahid. They wouldn't even name after. They wouldn't even name after Americans. These are American air bases in Saudi Arabia, and the source is Globemaster U.S. Military Aviation Database. Excan Village Air Base, King Abdul Aziz Air Base, King Fahd Air Base, King Khalid Air Base and Ryada Air Base in Ryada. Then in South Korea, you got Kunsan Air Base and Osan Air Base. Then in Kyrgyzstan, you got the Transit Center at Manas. Man, let me say this. In Turkey, you got Incirlik Air Base. In other words, like I said, this was just the Air Force. I'm going to read one more source. Let's go down to where the United States Army, overseas, they got in that region. Where we at? In Iraq, of course, we know Iraq. We can just call Iraq the green zone because the whole damn country belongs to America now. Then you got Japan. You got Camp Zama in Tokyo. You got Torii Station in Okinawa, and you got Fort Buckner in Okinawa. In Kuwait, man, you got Kuwait is the army base. What can I say? You got South Korea. South Korea is from the time of the Korean War. And of course, Israel, their little welfare state, is their base. Then you're talking about the Marines. The Marines have a base, Camp Rhino in Afghanistan and Camp Kandahar in Afghanistan. Let me see what else we got here. Listen to now, the Marines, they practically own Japan. You got, let's start off with Iraq. You got Iraq, the Marine bases. You got forward opening base in Abu Ghraib. You got Al-Assad Air Base. You got Al-Takdum Air Base. You got Camp Baharia Air Base. And you got Camp Gannon in Husbaya. The Marines in Japan, you got Camp Courtney, Camp Foster, Camp Gonzales, Camp Hansen, Camp Kinzer, Camp Lester, Camp Maturis, and Camp Schwab. And then you got the Marine Air Corps Air Station in Futama in Okinawa. You got Marine Corps Air Station in Iwakuni. You got Camp Fuji, and you got Yomitan Auxiliary Airfield. Man, it goes on. It goes on. So when you read that in Joel chapter, let me say this. I made it a point to not even bother to read the ones in Europe, the ones in Central Europe, the ones in Scandinavia, the ones in England. They got military bases in England also. I didn't even bother to come south of the equator. Okay, read that verse one more time, huh?
Joel chapter 2 and verse 20. But I will remove far off from you the northern army.
So the Most High has taken the North American army and have scattered them over the world. And now at this present date, let's say for the last decade or more, because we're talking about from 1991 until 2010, what's that? That's 11 years now? No, it wasn't. Huh? Damn, I can't even count. That's 19 years. From 1991 to 2010 is what? 19 years, the Most High has been taking that military and concentrating them in this region that he's describing here in Joel chapter 2, verse 20. Read it again.
Joel chapter 2 and verse 20. But I will remove far off from you the northern army, and will drive him into a land barren and desolate.
Now let me say this. All of this is taking place while people is screaming and crying because they can't go fishing no more. All of this is taking place. In other words, not only is the Gulf of Mexico disaster a great, quote, American tragedy for its economy and for its society, for its ecosystem and all that, but at the same time, what could be a more perfect distraction? You understand? What could be a more perfect distraction than in the Southeast to have some ecological catastrophe take place while they continue to march to war, march to Armageddon, in the Middle East? What could be a greater distraction in the southwestern states than the battle that's erupting over the immigration issue? What could be a better distraction while the federal government, and the social architects march and lead the American empire to its final doom in the Middle East? That's what the Most High is using it for. You gonna finish that up?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
With his face toward the East Sea.
In other words, he's headed towards the East Sea, as far as Japan. Now, brothers will refute that because they'll say it's restricted entirely to the Middle East concerning like battlefield. That is, we just read it, Iraq. The Iraq is called what you would call, when the Most High's assault on this kingdom, Iraq is going to be ground zero for all the world's armies. But they're going to span, it goes from Iraq and then it permeates to the Mediterranean and to Japan, because that's where all of America's armies at. Then you got, in the meat of that, you got India, and you got what? You got China. Those two big powerhouses of people. Go ahead.
And his hinder part toward the utmost sea.
So his back part is going to be enclosed in by the Mediterranean, and his face is going to be headed toward the East Sea. Go ahead.
And his stink shall come up, and his ill savor shall come up.
And his stink. Now, why does it say his stink is going to come up? It's not talking about the releasing of gas. It's talking about, I know what, read it again. Did it say his carcass?
No.
What did it say? Read it again.
And his ill savor shall come up.
It's talking about what happens to a body when it's put to death, when it's dead. In other words, that whole military is going to be decimated. That whole military is going to be eviscerated when Christ comes. Now, I'm going to prove that to you real quick. Let's do this. I want go to Joel. You're in Joel. Go to chapter 3.
Okay.
And I want you to read start at verse 9.
Okay.
Because it's going to tell you, at the place where all these military mights gather, that's where the Most High is going to intervene. Read it.
Joel chapter 3 and verse 9. Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles. Prepare war. Wake up the mighty men. Let all the men of war draw near.
And listen, now we done already read in Revelation chapter 16 and verse 12 and Revelation chapter 9 and verse 13 where all the men of war are being drawn to. That's why, why do you think Barack Hussein Obama was letting this damn thing drag out so long? He wouldn't receive, let's talk about the Gulf War, the Gulf of Mexico disaster, the oil. He wouldn't receive no help from countries whose petroleum industries are experts in these type of catastrophes. I should say, at that time, in those type of potential catastrophes. It turns out to be a catastrophe now because of how he refused help. Because he was trying to literally let it become to maximum potential for catastrophe. Go ahead.
Let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords.
Yeah, you know what you can call that? When it says beat your plowshares into swords, and I see we got 7 minutes, this is going to be a part 2. This is definitely going to be a part 2 this coming Sunday. Oh, and I have to say, I think we got a couple of callers that joined us. From here on out, our shows are going to be at 8 o'clock Guatemalan time. So last week we actually broadcasted an hour later than we did today. But from here on out, it's literally going to be at the hour that we started today, which is 8 o'clock. I have to say Guatemalan time, which actually 8 o'clock Guatemalan time. We're 1 hour behind Texas. All right, that's what time we're going to be broadcasting. But like I said, we're going to have to make this a part 2 because this is so expensive. Read that again, brother. Joel chapter 3, and you started at verse 9. Pick up where you left off.
Okay. Joel chapter 3 and verse 10.
Go ahead.
Beat your plowshares into swords.
Now, do you know what beating plowshares into swords? A plowshare was an instrument of what? Of agriculture. It's an instrument that's brought about that really results in what? The production of food. But when it says beat your plowshares into swords, it's talking about resources and money being taken from other industries and put into defense spending and put into military spending. No, that's what nations are doing. It said, no, what nations are building up their militaries. Beat your plowshares into swords. Go ahead.
And your pruning hooks into spears.
Continue.
Let the weak say, I am strong.
Yeah, you got all of these small countries. Like you got this alliance BRIC. Brazil, Russia, India, and China. These are all third world and developing countries. You know, supposedly the Soviet Union fell in 1990, wasn't it? Or was it 80? What was it? It was like 89 and 90 where the Berlin Wall came down. And then Russia went into a horrid economic and social condition. And they're built back up. That's why the Most High said, let the weak say I am strong. You got Hugo Chavez down in Venezuela. You got President Presidente Lula in Brazil. These cats done hooked in with who? They done hooked in with the Russians and the Indians, and they down there in the Caribbean doing exercises and maneuvers in the Caribbean Sea, brothers, with Russia's nuclear sub, which might explain why the American fleet, 46 warships, just came down off the coast of Costa Rica about a week ago. You understand? All of this is, but people don't know what, and people are looking at the ducks with oil on them. They're looking at the little turtles with oil on them, and they don't understand. Right behind that turtle is a damn nuclear sub. Right, you know what I'm saying? Following the turtle in the shore is a damn Russian nuclear sub. Go ahead, brother.
Verse 11. Assemble yourselves.
It's talking about all. Read it again.
Assemble yourselves and come, all you heathen.
All the nations. Continue.
And gather yourselves together round about.
Continue. Now, we already know, like I said, through Revelation chapter 9 and 13 and Revelation chapter 16 and 12, that the area where they're gathering themselves round about it encompasses the place where the Euphrates River runs through, and that is what? That's the country that we know as Iraq today. Go ahead.
Thither cause thy might.
Thither. It says thither means there. This is Joel inserting a prayer in where all the nations are gathered. Thither, go ahead.
Cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord.
Thither, cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord. In other words, in the place where all of these nations gather, in the place where, that's why the Lord, let me say this. Read that one, with that verse 11. Read the whole verse 11 again.
Joel chapter 3, verse 11. Assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither, cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord.
Now go back to Revelation chapter 16, and you're going to read that last verse on why. In other words, Revelation chapter 16 and verse 12 through 14.
Revelation chapter 16, verse 12. And the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates.
In other words, Iraq. Go ahead.
And the water thereof was dried up.
When it says the water was dried up, in other words, the political dynamic was set into motion with the intention of drawing nations there, drawing the military of these nations there. And like I said, for the most part, that began heavily, I should say, a concentrated effort beginning in 1991 when the first President Bush was in office. Go ahead.
That the way of the kings of the east might be prepared.
With an intention of preparing a great battlefield for all the kings to be involved. Continue.
And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon.
Yeah, this is all their propaganda. All the things that were done from 9/11 to the legislation to the so-called investigation, you know what I mean, that all led to the UN meetings where they were showing damn Colin Powell lying about how Saddam was trying to get some yellow cake rich in uranium from Nigeria. Go ahead.
And out of the mouth of the beast and out of the mouth of the false prophet.
Go ahead.
For they are the spirits of devils.
In other words, these are the spirit of deceivers and false accusers, whose purpose is to what? Go ahead.
Working miracles which go forth unto the kings of the earth.
In other words, going all into the minds of the kings, go ahead.
And of the whole world.
To
gather them to the battle of that great day of the Most High Almighty.
In other words, read it as it says it. Go ahead.
To gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty.
To gather them together to the great day of the battle of God Almighty, brother. And this is what's taking place, man. The Most High literally is using, let me say this. Now, in the process of this developing situation in the Gulf, remember, this really does have people's minds, and let me say this, and rightfully so. It's like a distraction, but it's not like a distraction that isn't worthy of the attention. Because you're talking about people are already getting sick. You're talking about people that die. You're talking about an entire ecosystem is being destroyed, and that destruction is spreading throughout the Atlantic Ocean, like I said, and like the scripture showed us, all of its corresponding waters. So, in other words, it was going to take something of a great enough magnitude that will be worthy enough, that will command the attention of the people and of the citizens. And let me say, not just of the region, but all people what? all people concerned. And then what's taking place in the Middle East is what's going to catch them by surprise. That's what's going to happen. So we like to thank all the brothers and sisters, whoever you are out there listening, that participated in us sharing this information with you. And like I said, man, we're going to be broadcasting again this coming Sunday, but an hour earlier than we did, okay, last week, which was like today, 8 o'clock Guatemalan time, which is 9 o'clock at night, Texas time. So we thank you guys. Thank you very much.